A starving German shepherd puppy lay shivering beside a snowy road in Flagstaff, his tiny body curled against an old military green suitcase. His fur was frozen, his ribs showing beneath the ice-matted coat, and every shaky breath sounded like it might be his last. He had no collar, no human, no reason to keep fighting, and yet he refused to let go of that suitcase. He didn't guard it for warmth. He guarded it with purpose. No one understood why a dying puppy would protect an abandoned army case with his life. No one knew what was hidden inside. But when a 58-year-old veteran finally opened that suitcase, he didn't find money. He didn't find weapons. He found names, memories, and a legacy so sacred, it brought a grown man to his knees in the snow. What happens next will make you cry and believe that true duty never dies. Before we begin, tell me, where are you watching from? Drop your country in the comments below. The wind carved ghostly shapes across the frozen highway of Flagstaff, whispering through the pines like distant voices of men long gone. Henry Walker, a 58-year-old veteran with weathered skin and a limp born not from injury but from memory, trudged through the snow, his heavy green coat pulled tight against the bitter Arizona wind. He was tall, broad-shouldered, his posture still carrying remnants of discipline, yet his eyes, steel blue and distant, spoke of long years of silence. His beard grew unevenly along a jaw lined with quiet resilience, while his short gray hair barely moved in the freezing wind. Once a soldier of command and clarity, Henry had long since retreated from the world. After his wife Linda passed away 3 winters ago, something inside him had gone quiet. Words became rare, conversations unnecessary. He lived on the outskirts of town, near Coconino National Forest, surrounded only by trees, snow, and echoes of things he didn't say anymore. This morning, he had simply set out for supplies. But fate, as it often does, had placed something else in his path. A faint movement, barely visible, caught in the corner of his eye. A tremble, a breath, a life. Near a snow-draped pine just off the roadside, half buried in ice and cold, lay a small German shepherd puppy, no older than 4 months. Its coat, which should have been black and warm chestnut, was matted with mud, ice, and exhaustion. It trembled, ribs faintly visible beneath wet fur, but its eyes, its amber eyes, were the thing that stopped Henry in his tracks. They were not afraid. They were not searching for help. They were standing guard. The pup was curled tightly around something, not for warmth, but for protection. A military green suitcase, old, weather-beaten, marked with age, dust, and stories not yet told. Henry paused. Something about the scene felt eerily familiar, not visually, but emotionally. It reminded him of the day he stood guard beside the coffin of Corporal Jameson Hayes, refusing to leave until the final salute was given. He took a slow step forward, boots crunching through snow. The puppy heard it, and despite shivering, despite weakness, despite hunger, it did not run. It did not cower. Instead, it growled. Not in aggression, not in panic, but in defense. Its body arched forward, positioning itself between Henry and the suitcase, paws gripping the handle like a soldier clutching his post. Its voice was frail, but its resolve was iron. Henry knelt slowly, his aging knees protesting. He spoke in the voice once used to calm injured comrades, low, steady, unthreatening. "Easy there, buddy. I'm not here to take anything." The puppy's ears flickered at the sound of that word, buddy. Its breathing was shallow, but its gaze did not break. It was protecting, not a possession, but a purpose. The wind shifted, carrying a thin veil of snow across the road. Henry removed his glove, leaving his palm open, offering not help, but permission. The pup trembled, not just from cold, but from effort. Effort to guard something larger than itself. Even now, it refused to let go. That's when Henry noticed the words faintly stenciled along the side of the suitcase, half hidden under frost. U.S. Army, K-9 unit, but beneath it, something smaller, carved, not painted, barely visible, barely surviving time. For those who still stand watch, a shiver ran through Henry that had nothing to do with cold. He looked into the dog's amber eyes. It was no longer just a stray. It was no longer just a weak puppy in the snow. It was a sentinel, the last guard in a long line of forgotten soldiers. He whispered, more to himself than to the dog, "Whatever's in that suitcase, It's not just important, it's sacred. The road grew silent, the wind stilled, the dog did not release its grip, and Henry Walker, a man long retired from duty, felt something he thought he had buried with his past. A call, a mission, a reason. Something sacred was waiting to be protected, or perhaps to be remembered. Snow still clung to the porch railings of Henry Walker's cabin, melting slowly in the afternoon sun, as a soft wind combed through the tall pines surrounding his property. The cabin, tucked away in the quiet outskirts of Flagstaff, had always been a sanctuary of solitude and memory. Now, for the first time in 3 winters, it had another heartbeat inside. The small German shepherd puppy lay wrapped in an old wool blanket by the fireplace, its body still frail, ribs faintly visible under matted fur. Yet despite the warmth and safety, its eyes did not soften. They remained fixed on one thing, the military green suitcase resting on Henry's worn hardwood floor, positioned only a few feet away. Henry had already dried it off, noting the dents, frayed seams, and dark stains that neither time nor cleaning could erase. The faded lettering still clung to its side, U.S. Army K-9 Unit, but it was the brass lock on top that held his gaze. There, barely visible beneath scratches, was a final inscription: Fort Carson, K-9 Memorial Unit. Every soldier knew Fort Carson. Every K-9 handler knew what it stood for. Henry sat in his leather armchair, elbows on knees, hands clasped, eyes fixed on the dog. He had named him Buddy that morning, not out of sentiment, but because when he first said the word, the dog had paused its growl and stared directly at him, as though recognizing something familiar. Buddy lay as close to the suitcase as his exhausted body allowed, front paws stretched protectively toward it, even in sleep. He did not whimper from pain, nor from hunger, but from something else, something Henry could not yet name. Each time Henry gently pushed the suitcase a few inches away, Buddy would wake, stare, and drag himself closer, resting his chin on the cold metal like a soldier sleeping beside his pack. That evening, as the sun dipped behind the pines, painting the frost in pale orange, Henry prepared food, soft-boiled chicken and broth. He placed the bowl gently near Buddy, but the pup refused to eat unless the suitcase was beside him. It wasn't attachment, it wasn't fear, it was duty. Henry knew the difference. That night, Henry sat by the fire, the room dim except for the golden glow of embers. Silence stretched between man and dog, but it was not empty. It was full of questions. He studied the suitcase, thinking about its weight, not in pounds, but in years, in names, in memories. He remembered the men in his unit, their helmets resting on rifles in rows, the folded flags, the photos sent home. Dogs had been there too, silent heroes, unseen, unspoken, but never forgotten by those who survived. He looked at Buddy and murmured, "This isn't yours, but it was given to you. Someone wanted you to keep watch." Buddy lifted his head, something ancient flickering in his amber eyes. It wasn't comprehension, but alignment, as though Henry had unknowingly spoken a language the puppy understood. Shortly after midnight, Henry awoke to faint sounds, paw steps, gently scratching on wood. He rose quietly. Buddy stood at the center of the room, facing the suitcase, ears perked, body tense, not afraid, not curious, but aware, like a soldier responding to a call that others could not hear. He let out a soft rumbling sound, not aggressive, not warning, but longing. Henry watched in stillness, a strange feeling curling slowly in his chest. The pup was not just guarding something, he was waiting for someone or something. Henry moved to the suitcase and noticed, for the first time, deep scratch marks on the metal corner, intentional, carved rather than worn. Letters, no, a name, half faded, Hay. He did not need to read the rest. Sergeant William Hayes, K-9 handler, Fort Carson, one of the last men Henry had saluted before leaving the army. A man who believed that dogs too carried memories worth preserving. And suddenly, Henry understood. Buddy wasn't guarding a mystery. He was guarding memory. He looked at the puppy and whispered, "It's not just a suitcase." His voice trembled. "It's a promise." And for the first time in 3 years, Henry felt something he thought he had buried with his past: purpose. The morning in Flagstaff broke with a muted light, soft and silver, filtered through the thick clouds that made the world feel hushed, as if the sky itself was holding its breath. Henry Walker sat on the floor of his cabin, legs crossed, the military green suitcase placed between him and Buddy, who rested only inches away, chin on the cold metal, eyes wide and unwavering. He was stronger now, though still thin, his fur no longer tangled with ice but still dull in patches. His amber eyes, however, glowed brighter, alert, watchful, as if waiting for permission rather than protection. Henry exhaled slowly. The moment had come. He reached forward, not roughly, not hesitantly, but with the careful reverence of a soldier touching a memorial. The brass latch, stiff from years and stories, resisted his hand before finally clicking open. Buddy's ears pricked, his body tense, but he did not growl this time. He only watched. Inside, there were no weapons, no documents, no secrets of war. Instead, the suitcase held what the world rarely remembered: a pile of canine dog tags, military, police, and rescue, each worn down, stamped with names, units, and dates. Some were scratched, some dented, some tarnished with time, but all carried weight. The kind of weight that didn't rust. Most lay loose, but some were carefully tied with thin, worn ribbons, alongside faded photographs, frayed nylon collars, and bronze medallions shaped like shields. Henry stared at them, feeling the silence change in the room. Even the crackling fire seemed to soften, to listen. The first tag he lifted read, Duke, U.S. Army, K9, Desert Storm, 1991. He remembered that war, not because he had been there, but because he had known handlers who had. He remembered the sandstorms, the long waits in desert wind, the stories of dogs searching for mines and never coming back. Another tag, Molly, Search and Rescue, 9/11. This one had marks around the edges, as though it had been chewed, maybe by grief, maybe by time. Henry had seen her photo before, on a memorial in New York. He remembered seeing footage of her, paws bleeding, tail wagging, continuing her search among the ruins. Then another, Rex, Iraq, 2003. Attached to it was a photograph, faded but visible, showing a young soldier in dusty fatigues, kneeling beside a large German shepherd with proud, watchful eyes. There was something familiar in that dog's stare, something Henry had seen in Buddy. Then he saw it, a folded paper, yellowed, carefully placed, not crumpled. He opened it. The handwriting was neat but shaky, the kind written by someone who once wrote strong, steady, intentional words, but now wrote through age. The letter began, "If you're reading this, it means the watch has been passed." Henry felt a chill run down his spine. The letter spoke of a man named Sergeant William Hayes, a former K9 handler who had spent his later years collecting the identities of fallen service dogs, military, police, rescue. Dogs no longer remembered in ceremonies, but remembered by those who had served beside them. He kept these tokens not as trophies, but as proof that loyalty never dies. It just changes keepers. It ended with a line that caught Henry's breath. One day, another will guard this, not by blood, but by spirit. You will know him when he doesn't run from duty, but runs to it. Buddy, curled beside the suitcase, lifted his head. Their eyes met. It was not coincidence, not luck. He had been chosen. Somewhere, somehow. Henry whispered, without fully understanding why, "You weren't guarding a suitcase. You were guarding them." And for the first time since finding Buddy, he reached out, not to test, not to tame, but simply to understand. Buddy did not flinch, did not back away. He only placed one paw, gently, purposefully, on the suitcase, like a keeper signing his oath. The road to Fort Carson, Colorado, stretched across miles of frozen plains, winding between silent forests and distant snowy peaks. Henry drove his old Ford truck with both hands steady on the wheel, though his thoughts were far from calm. Beside him, in the passenger seat nestled on a wool blanket, Buddy sat alert, not anxious, not fearful, but purposeful. He was stronger now, fur slowly regaining its sheen, ribs less visible, amber eyes sharp, scanning every turn of the landscape, as if he somehow knew they were traveling towards something meant for him. By the time they reached Fort Carson, the sun had begun to sink, casting a pale gold light across the snow-covered training grounds. Henry parked near an old brick building, with faded paint that read, K9 Operations and Memorial Training Wing. The walls bore scratches from generations of working dogs, and the wind carried faint echoes of barking, footsteps, and commands once spoken with urgency and pride. Inside, the building was warm, filled with aging photographs, dusty filing cabinets, and the faint scent of coffee and disinfectant. A single woman sat behind the reception desk, middle-aged, tall, slim, with graying black hair tied into a low bun. She wore a simple cardigan and glasses, and her eyes, though soft, held the calm sharpness of someone used to working with both animals and soldiers. Her name tag read, Linda Palmer. She looked up when she saw the dog. "That's not just any puppy," she said quietly, voice low and measured. Linda was a former K-9 behavioral specialist. 15 years of service, known for rescuing dogs that others declared untrainable. She was gentle, but she was precise, speaking little but observing everything. Henry introduced himself, explaining where they'd found Buddy, the military suitcase, and the letter from Sergeant William Hayes. At the name, her expression shifted. Respect first, then sorrow. She stood, motioning toward the hallway. "You should talk to someone," she said. Someone who knew Hayes better than anyone. She led them through corridors adorned with framed photos, not of soldiers, but of dogs. German shepherds, Malinois, Labradors, each pictured beside their handlers, some smiling proudly, others solemn, others faded with time. Each photo had a name and service date. At the end of the hall sat an older man at a worn wooden desk. He was in his early 70s, tall though slightly stooped, with a neatly trimmed gray mustache, sun-weathered skin, and eyes that held both weight and warmth. He wore a brown vest over a navy shirt, sleeves rolled to the elbows, exposing hands marked by years of training dogs and saluting soldiers. His name, Robert Bob Ellington, retired K-9 master trainer. He looked at Henry first, nodding with the familiarity of one soldier acknowledging another. Then he saw Buddy. The nod stopped. His chest rose slowly. His hand, weathered and calloused, lowered gently to the pup's level. Buddy did not bark, nor back away. He only stepped forward, calm, steady, placing one paw onto Bob's boot, as if acknowledging rank. Bob closed his eyes. Softly, he whispered, "He looks like her." Henry frowned. "Like who?" Bob walked slowly to the wall and pointed to a framed photograph. A large German shepherd, dark sable coat, ears tall and alert, sat proudly beside an older man with tired eyes and a gentle smile. On her collar was a worn brass nameplate, Duchess, K Memorial Guardian. Henry's breath caught, the name from the letter, the mother, the previous guardian of the suitcase. Bob spoke, voice quiet but heavy. She belonged to Sergeant Hayes. He called her Duchess, said she was born with duty in her blood. She guarded the memorial bag for 6 years, wouldn't sleep unless it was beside her, wouldn't let anyone move it except him. Henry spoke softly. The letter said she left to pass the torch. Bob nodded. Hayes knew he was dying. Duchess was old too, but one day he said the strangest thing. Said, "It won't end with me. The next guardian will come, not by blood, by purpose." His voice deepened with something close to disbelief. 3 weeks later, Duchess was gone. So was the suitcase. Henry glanced at Buddy, who quietly sat near the photograph of Duchess, ears perked, gaze fixed. He didn't stir, didn't bark, just watched in silence. Bob looked at him. "You didn't find that dog." He paused. "That dog found you." Silence. Then Linda Palmer, standing in the doorway, finished quietly. "Buddy didn't find the suitcase. The suitcase found Buddy." And in that stillness, Henry understood. This was no accident. This was inheritance. Not by lineage, but by loyalty. A week after returning from Fort Carson, snow fell gently over Flagstaff, not with the harshness of winter storms, but with the softness of memory, slow, quiet, and thoughtful. Henry Walker stood beneath the tall pine behind his cabin, wearing his faded green coat and wool gloves, a shovel in hand. His breath rose in gentle puffs of white as he cleared snow from a small area beneath the tree, flattening the ground with slow, reverent motions. Beside him sat Buddy, larger now, stronger, his fur thicker, his gaze calm but alert. He no longer trembled, no longer whimpered, no longer acted like a lost animal. He sat straight, ears tall, paws forward, like a sentry assigned to a post. No uniform, no orders, yet unmistakably on duty. Henry paused to watch him, feeling that familiar ache in his chest that wasn't sadness. It was purpose, finally awake again. That morning, Henry began building something. He found old timber from his shed, brushed away spider webs, and carefully cut the pieces with his hands, steady and patient, though aged. His neighbor, Tom Landers, a retired carpenter in his late 60s with a sturdy build, silver hair tied back in a short ponytail, and hands permanently stained with varnish, walked over from his nearby cabin. Tom was a practical, modest man, known for fixing fences, repairing roofs, and never turning down coffee or conversation. He was quiet, but when he spoke, his words were honest without decoration. "You're building something meaningful," Tom said without asking. He glanced at Buddy. "And from the look of that fella, I reckon it's not a doghouse." Henry simply nodded and offered Tom a hammer. Under the pine tree, they built a small wooden stand, clean, square, strong. When finished, Henry retrieved the suitcase. He didn't place it on the ground this time, he placed it on the stand. Then he opened it, and one by one he took the tags, Duke, Molly, Rex, Duchess, others unnamed, and hung them on small brass hooks fixed along the wooden frame. The wind stirred them softly as they clinked against one another, not noisily, but softly, like light tapping on a door long closed. Tom spoke quietly. "Feels like they just checked in someplace safe." By afternoon, they finished a modest memorial, just wood, brass tags, and a single beam of sunlight that fell through the branches onto the suitcase. No plaque, no carved names on stone, just memory, held not by monuments, but by hearts. That evening, as dusk settled in lilac and gold across the snowy clearing, Henry set a wooden bench near the memorial. He sat. Buddy lay beside the suitcase, resting not from fatigue, but from watchfulness, a rest shaped like readiness. As the cold deepened, footsteps approached from the dirt road leading to Henry's cabin. It was Linda Palmer from Fort Carson, wearing a long beige coat, black gloves, and a soft green scarf that matched the pines. Her graying hair was pulled back, and her dark eyes shimmered with both sadness and pride. She had driven all day to see the memorial. She walked slowly toward it. She didn't touch anything. She merely stood before the suitcase, head bowed slightly, not out of sorrow, but out of respect. After a moment, she said softly, "You didn't build a memorial for them. You built a place they can rest." Henry nodded. Buddy looked up at her, not wagging his tail, not seeking attention, but acknowledging her presence like a fellow guardian. Linda wiped her eye, not from tears, but from wind. "You know what Sergeant Hayes believed?" she said softly. "He said loyalty never dies. It just changes keepers." Henry looked at Buddy, whose amber eyes watched the snowy road as if expecting someone who might one day come, searching for history, or for a memory, or perhaps just for a reason to keep going. And Henry understood something then, something he had felt but not yet said. Buddy was not guarding the suitcase. Buddy was guarding the invitation to remember. As twilight thickened, the brass tags stirred in the wind, creating a faint metallic whisper, soft, rhythmic, almost like the echo of boots marching on distant ground. Henry whispered, not to the dog, not to Linda, not even to himself, but to the names on the tags. "Some duties don't end." He placed a hand gently on the suitcase. "They simply wait for the next faithful heart." And Buddy, keeper of memory, lay quietly beside it, eyes open, ears listening, heart ready. Sometimes God doesn't send angels with wings. Sometimes he sends them with 4 paws, tired eyes, and a heart that refuses to give up. In a world that moves too fast, where memories fade and promises are easily forgotten, there are still those, human or animal, who keep watch. Not because they have to, but because love, loyalty, and sacrifice were never meant to be abandoned. Maybe that's the real miracle, that long after battles end and long after names disappear, something quiet still remains. It waits in the snow. It watches in silence. And sometimes, if our hearts are humble enough, we are allowed to see it. So, tonight may God bless every faithful heart still standing guard, seen or unseen, named or unnamed. If this story touched your heart, help it reach someone who still believes in loyalty, miracles, and second chances. Share this story. Leave a comment with a prayer for someone who served, 2 legs or 4. And if you believe God still sends his angels in unexpected ways, subscribe so we can keep telling the stories the world must not forget. May the Lord bless you, keep you, and send his angels, however they may look, to guard your path.